That Bryan Adams can move people across the planet is also part of the episode, as is the question, can you really regret something you didn't do? Listen to episode 17 of the WalkyTalky podcast to find out how Jacqueline came to Vancouver and how she's dealing with so many options in life. WalkyTalky podcast live from Vancouver. I'm very happy to sit in a beautiful apartment in the middle of Vancouver while the sun is going slowly down, sitting on a couch with a nice guest, which is Jacqueline. I'm very happy and grateful that you took the time to sit down and answer my question, talk about a bit of life in general and your life as well. I would like to ask you if you would like to tell a bit how we met and where we met, because this is already kind of a while ago.
Sure.
And here
All
we
right.
go.
Well, here we go. Speaking English, being two German-speaking ones. So, how we met? We met near Lake Louise. I was on a 10-day trip all by myself. I was just hoping for some peace and quiet in Canada's beautiful nature. And I overheard two people talking in German. So I think when we first met, I actually just said, "Have a nice day" in German. And I walked past you guys because you were hiking. You were hiking with someone you met that
I think
day
it was
as well, right?
Lotte or Lotta.
Yeah, Lotte, right?
Greetings to Lotte or Lotta, whenever you listen to that.
So I just figured, in a way, I figured just because we both speak German, I don't necessarily need to strike a conversation, as I also just like being in nature by myself. So I think I just figured I'll let you know I understand you guys so that you don't talk about my back. Right? No, so I just said hi and moved on. And then you guys took the same trail and you were right behind me. Yeah. And then at one point you caught up to me because I was taking a photo of this beautiful field with the purple flowers.
Yeah, I remember.
And then I saw you guys coming and I figured I'm going to wait for you guys because it would be really nice to have not a selfie, but an actual nice photo with the glacier in the background. Yeah. And that's when you caught up. And I think we had a spontaneous lunch right there and then.
Yeah, and then we continued.
We just continued for the day,
us.
right?
Yeah.
And that's how it was.
Yeah. You said you were on a 10-day trip to the whole area, the Rockies up there. Before we go, how you get there and where you slept, because it's an interesting story as well, I would like to ask you, what do you think about encounters in general?
Well, I think there's obviously an element of maybe even serendipity to it, or certainly an element of coincidence where two strangers meet and bond over either a shared experience or maybe a common interest or something like that. I think if humanity would be more open to encounters, we would have more, if that makes any sense. Because oftentimes we are presented with opportunities to connect with other people, but we don't do it.
We don't encounter them.
We stay in our bubble, especially if you're traveling with someone. You kind of stay in that group. And that's maybe also one reason why I really don't mind being on the road by myself. Because in a way, you are opening yourself up to encounters. And, I don't think I ever met anyone where I could say that was not an interesting person in one way or another. Which is always interesting to find out something about someone that may not be someone you would talk to in a regular setting.
Right. So you went to the Rockies alone to get the possibility to make yourself free for encounter things and meet a guy who's making a podcast about encounters.
Yes.
But you did something else, like you how was your trip?
Yeah.
Like which car? Like
yes.
which car did you use to go to the Rockies? Like everyone here, if I went out to the airport first time in Canada and was in Calgary and like the first thing I noticed was like, welcome to America, like big trucks everywhere. So which car did you choose to go to the Rockies?
Yes. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say I chose it. First thing was I looked up flights and I found really cheap flights to Calgary. So obviously I thought, oh, that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to rent a car and then do that. But as everybody was traveling in the summertime and not everybody has a car, obviously car prices or rental cars were super expensive, and I believe, many companies also sold part of their fleet. So that's another reason why they were super expensive. And then I figured, well, maybe I should look into rental cars in Vancouver because I personally drive a Smart.
Mm-hmm. Very smart.
So, yes. And as I was traveling by myself, I figured I don't want to spend money on accommodation. That kind of seems like a waste of money. So I would like to sleep in my cart. But now, obviously, how do you sleep in a Smart? That's a little bit on the narrow side. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So then the same thing happened in Vancouver. I couldn't find a rental car for a price that was even feasible. So I got in touch with my car mechanic and said, hey, can you take out the passenger seat? And I'm like, what? Why? I said, well, I'm going to go on this road trip and I'm going to sleep in the car. And I'm like, what do you mean you're going to sleep in the car? And I'm like, yeah.
That's not a car.
I'm like, well, you drive a Smart. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that should do, I have my head in the trunk and then I have my sort of bum on the seat and my feet can go underneath, that'll work. And he said, you're crazy. And I'm like, well, I guess, we'll find out.
Yeah.
I'm not picky, and I would say normally I love to sleep under the stars in the open. And I was contemplating, obviously I brought my sleeping bag and the mat. But then you wouldn't necessarily want to do that in bear country.
Right.
So I needed the car as a backup for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did it went? Like, is it easy to camp in a car in the Rockies, or do you have to take care of officers, or because like there's kind of you have to take care a bit where you stay, where you sleep, how you sleep. Like, how did that went for you?
You know what? I actually always ask. I didn't want to overstep boundaries anyway. So usually I would go up to tourist information and ask, is there a parking lot where you can stay overnight and spend the night? And oftentimes there was. So there was only 2-3 times where I sort of put the car in just regular neighborhoods. And obviously no one suspects that anyone would sleep in a Smart. Yeah. So no one checks there. But most of the times I just ask and was at a empty parking lot where overnight parking was allowed.
I remember 2 things about the hike. The first thing was like your belt on your backpack, because I think that was the first time in my experience of Canada, like where I saw and heard it, like that people use a bell on the backpack to kind of alarm the bears. But what I want to talk about is I remember that you talked about that you are trying to connect yourself from time to time to nature and just touching trees, flowers, whatever.
Yeah, good memory.
Why is like, since when is that? Like, did you ever had this connection to nature, or does it started at a certain point? What is the exact feeling which you have a connection when you do that? Like, because we're talking a lot about nature in these times, and we should hug the trees, and I do that as well. But what's your story about that?
Yeah, I don't think there's a timeline where that started, but I feel like there's sort of just inner peace when you're in nature, especially when you're all by yourself. It's different than when you're with someone, because I think inner peace is sort of how I would define it is if you wouldn't want to be anywhere else with no one else doing nothing else. And, those moments of bliss where you just feel like I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. This is just heaven. Look around you. It's just like you're in awe, right? And I don't think in a city there's many scenarios where you could find awe, but you can easily find awe in nature. And to your point, I mean, when you're all by yourself, you kind of figure, what am I going to sort of do? Obviously, you look around yourself, but we have more than just the visual sense. We have, 5 senses or 6 senses. So why not just use all your senses? And I do feel like, or we know that the world is energy. Everything is energy, and there's reciprocity. And, if you send out good vibes, then maybe good vibes come back. And touching leaves or touching flowers, it feels good, or touching the bark of a tree just to feel it. And so, I would sometimes just high five flowers or just sort of say, you look beautiful or something like that. And
are you doing this in the city as well?
Not so much. But when I have a dog, so obviously I have to go on walks twice a day. So
if the listeners can hear the snoring dog in the back,
yes.
It's your dog, which is snoring,
right.
But I think they don't hear
We put her in another room, but we may still hear it on the radio. So I try to be mindful and not look at my phone when I go on a walk. I try to be aware of my surrounding. And I think one of the toughest things in life is to be in the present moment. That moment of stillness and inner peace when you're in nature is just a perfect platform to get to the point where you can truly be in the present moment and not think about the future, not worry about past, but just soak in the beauty and the peace and quiet.
How long do you live in Vancouver now?
11 years.
11 years? Mm-hmm. That's quite a long time.
Yes.
So what brought you to Canada? Because we both speak German, that means we from a close area, but we're not from the same country. You from Switzerland. What's your story? How you came up to Vancouver?
Yes, Bryan Adams.
Bryan Adams.
Blame it on Bryan Adams. When I was, I know. When I was a teenager, I was a fan of Bryan Adams, and obviously, as teenagers
I saw people like Bryan Adams have a big impact, but I didn't realize that they're able to move people from one place to the other on the earth.
Yeah, normally you just put a poster on your walls, which I never did, by the way. But I looked into his background as I liked his music, and when I first saw a photo of Vancouver, I just figured, what a beautiful city. And in many ways, obviously, it reminds us of Switzerland or even Germany, right? You have the mountains, you have the lakes, you have the forests. So to me, it was almost like Switzerland on steroids, if that makes sense. It's everything you have in Switzerland plus more.
Yeah.
You have the sea as well, and you have the wilderness as well, and you have just more space.
And high buildings.
And high buildings as well, right? So I figured you wouldn't miss anything from Switzerland necessarily, but you gain more. So long story short, I did go to Vancouver for half a year in 1997 before I started university, and I really fell in love with the city and its people and sort of lifestyle. I didn't have the money to. So
you did not went to a concert of Bryan Adams or something? Like it was just.
No. In Switzerland, yes. I did. Yeah. Many.
But not here.
Later on, not
okay.
then.
Yeah.
It never coincided. Actually, this just here, New Year's Eve, he would have been in Vancouver, and I bought tickets, but they canceled it because of COVID restrictions. Yeah, so after that half a year, I went back on several occasions just to visit my friends again and come back. And, I just kind of couldn't let go of the thought of coming back to live here again. And after 15 years, believe it or not, I still had it in my mind. So at that point, getting also close to the age of 35, where I knew that would be the cutoff to apply for the young professional visa, I decided it's now or never. I had a job I loved. I didn't have the urge to leave Switzerland. But I always say to myself, I never want to regret the things I do. I wouldn't even classify that as a regret, right? That's just an experience. I think regrets per my definition, only come from things you didn't do.
You don't do, yeah.
So whatever you do, and it can be a bad experience at worst case, but I would never regret it because I knew I went after it, you know.
Well, I think you can't regret things which you didn't do.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how they are. Like, you can regret that you maybe not tried, but you cannot regret something which you didn't do.
Don't you think when people are about to die and they ask, well, what do you wish? And they say, oh, I wish I would have spent more time with my kids, or I wish I would have, you know, and they didn't do it, but they regret it. Don't you think that's a regret then, although they didn't do it?
Well, because regret something is like, you think that would be good to do normally, or it gives you something.
Yes.
But you cannot say how it would be if you don't do it. Like, let's make it difficult to regret things which you never did, because it can be worse. It can be horrible. And then you wouldn't regret it. So it's kind of a deep thinking about regret things, but this is like how I came up someday, like to think about, well, of course we always talk about regret things which we never did, but at the end I sort of like, we maybe shouldn't do that because it's kind of nonsense, because you don't know. You don't know how it would be.
I have a book for you. It's actually a fiction book. It's called The Midnight Library. And it talks exactly about that. So the short story is, there's this woman and she's not necessarily happy with her life. And then one day her cat dies. And at that point she figured, that's enough. I had enough. I'm done with this life. So I think she takes some pills, but not enough to kill herself. So she finds herself in sort of half alive, half dead in a library at midnight. So she sees the clock, it's midnight, and in the library she sees her school librarian from high school when she was a kid. So she's like, what are you doing here? What's happening? Where am I? She said, well, you're in the midnight library. Well, and what about all these books? What are they? I said, well, they're all the lives that you could have had but didn't have because you made different choices. And this one book, this is the book of regrets. And if you want to, I would like you to read through that book of regrets, and then whatever catches your eye, point that out to me, and I can make you go back to that life, and we'll take another book from the shelf, and you explore that life. So she does, you know, and in her case, at one point she wanted to become a musician, but didn't pursue that and went for a regular job, what have you. So she picks that, and then the librarian gets her the book where she would have been the musician. And the story behind the book is, no matter, obviously life is full of crossways where paths, you know, where it can go either way or what have you. And obviously, let's say it's not nice when your cat dies. But in a different life, if she would have chosen a different path, yes, her cat may have not died, but something else would have happened that can either be positive or negative. And the conclusion is, no matter which path you take in life, there will always be positive, there will always be negative. And there's no per se better or worse, because can you say, is it worse that the cat dies than if you were to have, I don't know, whatever, heart surgery? What's worse, right? I mean, it's just a different scenario. And I guess conclusion is, you're always on the right path. You're always living the right life.
If we put regrets maybe in a neutral situation, like, I think it's kind of always like, regret something means that would be better than, or would be a good experience which we missed. If we put regretting something more in a neutral way, it maybe would make, for me, then more sense to say I regret things. But anyhow, we don't want to lose the past where we're from. So continue where we were like about
why I came to Vancouver.
Why you came? You don't want to.
So so I it was actually it was 2010. I saw the Olympic Games on TV, and I'm thinking to myself, why am I not in Vancouver? I should be there right now. I should be there right this second, be at the Olympic Games. So I asked my boss, hey, I need to hop on the next plane. I want to go to the Olympics. Unfortunately, we have projects going, and he said no, but he said I could go in March, and March was when there was the Paralympics. So I figured that's kind of neat to support those athletes as well. So yeah, I'm going to do that. So I booked a flight for March 2010, was in Vancouver, and then at the end of my trip, I decided exactly 1 year from now, I'm going to live in Vancouver. And usually what I do in those situations, I write a letter to the universe. Mm-hmm. So on paper, handwritten, I shouldn't say a letter, I should say an order to the universe, because it's not a wish, it's not a dream, wishy-washy, maybe, maybe not, but an actual, yes. So an order comes with a demand, so to say. Yeah. And it comes with a delivery date. You want to tell the universe by when you want what. So I literally said, dear universe, by 1 year from then was by April 30th, 2011, I want to live and work in Vancouver. And I trust that you will help me and guide me and make this happen. Thank you so much. You have never let me down. Whatever. So, and you sent that off.
Where do you send that off?
And, send it off in your mind. You just sort of... But I have the letter.
So you wrote it down?
Yeah. No, I always, for important things, I do make those orders and write it on a piece of paper, So I did, and it kind of ties into the book The Secret, where they say, act as if, right? Sometimes if you want things, already now, today, you can act in a certain way, although you don't have it just yet. Yeah. But eventually you will. So you prepare your mind for it, but you also take concrete actions. So because I knew 1 year from now, I'm going to be in Vancouver, for example, I stopped making purchases. Because why would I buy more stuff if I'm moving? And then comes the end of the year. And in Switzerland, you have 3 months of giving notice. So I knew if I wanted to be in Vancouver by May 1st, I would have to give notice by the end of December, because January, February, March, right? I did. And everybody in my circle of friends was like, you're crazy. Do you have a job offer yet? I'm like, no. But I want to be in Vancouver by May 1st, so I have to give my notice now. No, I don't have a job offer yet. I just keep looking, and I like to think in worst case scenarios. So in my mind, what was worst case? Worst case would have been not having a work visa in time, not finding a job in time, having to use my savings to be in Vancouver on a student or on a tourist visa. Which I figured, can I do that? Would I be willing to do that? And the answer was yes. So to me, quitting was not really high risk. Plus, I knew my boss, he would take me back if I would really have the urge to come back. So I didn't feel pressured in that way. So I did. And I kept looking. And then... as I'm a true believer that things will fall in place as if when they're meant to be, sure enough, they did fall in place. From my contacts in Vancouver, I got 3 separate emails from 3 separate people telling me about that one same job they heard about and that they were thinking of me and that I should apply. And so I did. And so I got the job. And so I was able to apply for the work permit. And what I forgot to say, I actually booked my flight for May 1st. When I quit, I already did that because I knew May 1st.
Whatever happened, you booked the flight.
Yeah. And I received my work permit the night before I left. Literally, I had my friends invited for a farewell party. At that point, when the first people showed up, I had not received that in my mail, in my email. I did not actually know whether I would even be allowed to hop on a flight the next day, because you shouldn't be on a plane if you have a
visa,
an outstanding application. If they see that you applied but you haven't received it yet, they can send you back if they want to. So I'm like, I don't even know if I can fly tomorrow, but yeah. I received it that night. Yeah,
because you said end of April.
Yeah.
Not beginning of May.
Yeah, right? Exactly. True, the universe listened to the day, right? To the day. Yeah, it works every time. It really does. For big things, if you want something badly enough, and if you trust, and sometimes take actions, although you don't know how it's going to go, if you just sort of have that faith, it will just fall in place. Is there a connection,
are you able to experience things like that if you are planned and organized too much? Because we talked about it earlier, about making plans, but sometimes it's good to be free, be more relaxed.
I do like to go with the flow. Once I was on a world trip, and literally we never knew where we're gonna sleep that night. We just traveled, and we were certain that we would find accommodation somewhere, and it wasn't a priority, and we just sort of went with the flow.
It's maybe a good way to experience the trust in that. Go with a backpack, explore the world. Take the risk out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Do you think you can do that with a partner?
I did do it with my then boyfriend, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were in the same mood, in the same...
Yes, it worked really well.
That's nice.
We only had 3 arguments in 12 months. And, I remember all of them, and, they were about silly things.
Yeah.
Always, one was over pizza.
Yeah.
But obviously in the end it's not about pizza. We also know that. But to have 3 arguments in a year when you travel 24/7 with someone, I think it's good. We always said, if we would get on each other's nerves, we're independent enough to be able to travel by ourselves. We would just split up and maybe we meet 1 week later or whatever. But we never had to do that. We always did everything together. It was interesting, yeah.
What's the craziest story which you experienced in Vancouver?
In Vancouver?
Mm-hmm. If you think back the last 11 years, I think there happened a lot.
In Vancouver?
Can be bad, can be good, can be whatever.
Well, it ties into sort of dreams, I guess. I bought a cabin within weeks from not even having it on my radar to actually doing it. And how it happened is I was on Vancouver Island, and I was in the middle of nowhere in a forest, and I come across this little lake in the forest, and on the other side of the lake was a green field. And I figured that would be a perfect place to build a house. You would have your private lake, and then I was assuming from that field you would overlook all of Salt Spring Island. I was like, that would be just amazing to own that piece of property. So anyhow, because it was always a dream of mine to own a cabin, I had this Google alert for cabins. And usually I would not even open them. The alerts come so frequently. It's just like with newsletters. Most of the time you don't open newsletters. But a few weeks later, I opened the Google alert, and that piece of property was for sale. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. That's a sign from the universe. That's mine, right? It has to be. So I asked a friend of mine who's a realtor if he would tag along to go to this appointment, as there's probably questions I have no clue about, but he does. And he was a fan of Salt Spring anyway. So off we go. And turns out that's not an ideal property to buy. But anyhow, he sends me another link of another property also on Salt Spring. Said, hey, how about this one? Off we go again, looking at that other one, also not the right one. And then he sort of makes this comment, well, it's 8 acres. And it's subdividable, that would be enough for both of us. I'm like, what do you mean, both of us? Are you suggesting we buy together? Because that was not on my radar, right?
Yeah.
He said, well, I mean, if it's 8 acres and if it's subdividable, you can build your cabin, I'll build mine, we're neighbors. I'm like, okay, hadn't crossed my mind, but it's an option. So then not even a week goes by, and I see this cabin on the lake, picture perfect, Canada dream, just like how you would envision the Canada cabin life. So I give him a call, those who sell the property, and they said, oh, it's too late almost because we already got an offer in and, it's just a matter of removing subjects. We're no longer showing it. This will probably go through. And I said, well, I mean, you never know with subjects. Can I ask, what are the subjects? And I said, well, we want cash. We want to sell it now as we need the money. And I said, well, I have a line of credit. He has a line of credit. We could do that. He's even a realtor. We could even draw up the contract right away. Please let us see it. So they agreed. And that day, without even sleeping on it, me and my friend, we bought a cabin. And I mean, that was within weeks and not consciously planned, and certainly not necessarily planned to buy with someone, which bears a risk in itself, if you want to say so. But on the other hand, obviously, it also gives you the opportunity to buy it more easily if you can split the costs. So that was kind of a crazy...
Like this cabin is quite remote, I know. Like it's outside. And you also said like there's no reception or Wi-Fi or anything.
Yes. Yeah, it's my heaven on earth because I don't think there's so many opportunities
it's only
in our life.
Like access by boat? Like no,
boat access only. It's a 40-minute boat ride to get to there. It's at the end of a lake. And in our community, there's about a dozen houses and there's no cell phone reception, nothing. So you're literally out in the middle of nowhere. There's no grocery store, nothing, right? It's just in the woods, but on the lake, directly on the lake. And it's just so nice to be forced to shut down and unplug and unwind and just enjoy nature and embrace it and do the things you do. You chop woods and, you do what you do at a cabin. You read. And we have, there's no electricity, so we have to make a fire and have candle lights at night, or you bring your battery-powered lights, and it's
take care of it.
No, it was a blessing to have that during the pandemic as well, for sure.
Yeah.
It's a place where Absolutely. You can forget everything, even COVID. You can even forget COVID.
Yeah, I think Canada wasn't the worst place to be in a pandemic like this because a lot of people told me already, like, it's so much space, so much nature. We just went out for camping, whatever. I'm super happy that you here and talk about your life, because we had this conversation before we started that we both know the situation, not really enjoying to speak in public. So I told you that I had also my experience with that. How is it for you now to speak in a microphone? Of course, it's private. No one is around live and listening, but I have the feeling you're feeling very comfortable and good. Does it change in your life your confidence about speaking in public or in front of people, or is it always same?
So obviously, I think you make it fairly easy to relax, right? If you would be a total stranger, it may be different. But because we already met and spoke
a few times,
it makes it easier to speak. I do think, funny enough, I never enjoy it, but I think on the feeling, on the emotion spectrum, anxiety and pleasure are sort of on that same spectrum, and it's really just the mindset that makes the difference whether you experience something as anxiety or as pleasure. Yeah. Because from what's happening in your brain and the chemicals that are released are pretty much the same. And
if you go through anxiety, like the energy which you get back is kind of the highest which you can get.
Yeah. I mean, the reward also to kind of know, generally speaking, I always like to push myself a little bit and test my boundaries. I think if you live your life in a comfort zone, never really testing the waters, it's kind of a boring life. So sometimes you have to challenge yourself a little bit and then you grow from it. And did I look forward to have this conversation? Not per se, right? As again, it's not something I'm seeking. I'm not on social media. I would say I'm more of a private person, but as I was telling you, it's a good exercise for me to do and just,
Will you be on social media one day?
I don't know.
Because I'm asking for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what's the reason?
Yeah, there's something happening in which you are a creative person. You do something where you have to think about how you show who you are.
Yeah, so I think
what are you doing in the background? What's the secret?
What you're getting at is that I'm trying to find ways of how I can get to a point in my life where I can work from wherever, whenever. And I'm not like a developer in IT where that would be easy. Yeah. So I'm looking for ways of what I can do to also not be caught in this cogwheel of the workforce. Yeah. And as I love to read, I could read all day long. I love to consume new information. I think it's part of being curious to also tap into topics that you may not know anything about and just read about it. And there's barely anything that I don't find interesting. But anyhow, that led me to the idea that maybe I could publish a book. And nowadays with Amazon and Audible, that's not that hard of a thing to do. Whether that's successful or not, obviously that's a different story. Yeah. Part of being successful is obviously to market your product, because you can have the best product in the world if no one knows about it, you're not gonna make a living. So
and it also depends what succeed is for you.
Yes.
If you can start with I'm successful if I'm just doing it.
Yes.
And then you can go to the next step. But of course, if you want to sell a book and nobody knows.
That's the thing. I mean, for one thing, I always say, for me, it's not necessarily money driven. I truly think life is about the journey. It's about the process. If you're not enjoying the process, what's the point of it? And I think it was Alan Watts who once said, if you're a dancer, the whole purpose of being a dancer and what's or joyful about being a dancer is to dance. What would be the purpose if the dancer's goal would be to get to the end of the song? Right. Then the dance would be over. Yeah. And that's kind of how I see it with work or with life, right? What's the point of achieving a goal? Because once you get to that goal, then what's next? Then it can almost just go downwards from that goal. So for me, rather than achieving a goal, I think it's about the process of doing something. And in my case, that would just be enjoying the process of writing. Mm-hmm. That's as important as then the goal of being #1 bestseller, what have you not. And so
it also depends what succeed for you is. Like,
yes,
this it is working if you want to have succeed in selling the most books or being successful in selling songs or whatever. It is working when you make goals step by step on this ladder. That works, but it also depends like what is success for you. If you say like success for me as doing something that I like, being creative, share with some people, tell my story or my story which I wrote down. You don't need a goal. Like you live it.
Exactly. Yeah, I have 2 definitions of success, I guess. The one is what I already said earlier. If I wouldn't want to be anywhere else with no one else doing nothing else, I think that's sort of a state of bliss and inner peace that I would want to get to. And then the second element, I guess, would be around the question of purpose. And I think the biggest purpose, or what gives us the biggest fulfillment in life, is if you can achieve something with someone for something that's beyond your own goals, but for a greater good, to be of service for someone, serving something. And that's sometimes a little bit an inner conflict that I have when you think about just writing for myself. Obviously, you can argue and say the end result will serve someone. So that piece of purpose is given, right? If you solve a problem or help someone with the content of your books. For right now, it's a single person task. And sometimes I do think it may be a more fulfilling way to do something with someone, have a common goal, rather than just this single journey, so to say.
Yeah.
I'll roll with it, I don't even want to really set a timeline. Just, I work 80%. I decided that in March that I just wanted to enjoy life a little more and live life to the fullest, or feel alive. And to me, to work 100% 5 days a week seems too much for the amount of time we have on this planet. And therefore, I made the conscious decision to work 80%. So sometimes I find myself in this conflict where I think, oh, today would be a great day to go skiing. Let's do it. Let's go outdoors. Let's do that. And then
Which is a perfect place in Vancouver to be.
Yes,
to be
half
honest.
an hour away. It is a perfect place. Yeah, it's literally half an hour to go skiing. And then on the other hand, I have this other voice in my head saying, no, don't use that time to do that. Now it would be a good day to do writing. And in those moments, now I'm at a point. In the beginning, I was really agitated when I got to that point. Should I go skiing? Should I write? Should I go skiing? Should I write? I should write. I should write. I should write. You're never going to finish it if you don't write. Where I figured, you know what? That's just another type of cogwheel I'm getting myself into. I don't want life to be in a way where I think there's a lot of shoulds. You should do for whom? I don't know anything to anyone, and I don't want to make myself that pressure. That doesn't mean I'm lazy. I would say I'm quite entrepreneurial, and I sort of have a driven mindset, which makes that whole thing even harder.
Yeah, definitely.
To let go, because I am driven. But then I say no on a day where it feels like not enjoyable to write. I just consciously decide I'm not going to write, and I'm going to enjoy the day. Because
when
in
is
the
the
end,
situation? When are you, like, if you remember, when is the situation where you like to write?
Well, obviously it helps to have a rainy day, because I get edgy on sunny days. I just want to be outside. So it's easier wintertime, rainy days. That helps.
So it means when other options are cut off,
yes,
you can go
Yes.
to this option more, or to this.
Yeah. That being said, I do practice daily writing.
But what I want to say is it just shows, like, which is a normal thing in these times in our society, we have too much options.
Yes, we do. Yeah,
Because if
it
there
is.
wouldn't be 3 options, you would just write. Maybe. Or you would just go skiing. Or whatever.
But, would you still write if you're miserable doing it?
I don't know.
Even if you have 3 options, you may then choose one of the other 2. Although it's not 1,000 options. But yeah.
Yeah, but then something holds you back from it. And, we all know things which where we're really passionate for. That you forgot to go to bed and you forgot to eat because you really really like to do it.
Yes.
And this is something which is super, super nice to have if you come in this situation, if it's writing or whatever. I have that a few times when I'm writing. I have that when I make theater with kids. I have that when I coach kids on soccer, and different things. When I'm creative, I forgot time, I forgot everything around me, I just do it. And maybe the writing thing is at the moment not so passionate from you that you lose your time and all the other options.
You're reading my mind.
To get through it, because I never knew years ago that I would lose my mind in time with doing a short movie for my soccer team.
Oh, did you? Oh,
yeah.
nice.
So
Okay.
I was crazy in that. Like I didn't sleep for 2 weeks, kind of, because I want to finish it at one point. Or I didn't knew years ago that I give a shit about sleep when I have this project with kids to play theater or show them how to play. So it comes to the right time, and then you are in the situation and you noticed afterwards, oh, there was something which I really liked and I forgot everything around. There was no other option. There were maybe, but I didn't notice because I was so into that.
Yes. It's perfect if you're in that flow state. And I have that sometimes, when I bake, you forget time. Or the same thing if I do an art project, right? You're just there and you didn't even realize it's noon, and you didn't realize that you're hungry, right? You didn't go to the washroom, nothing. So, and to your point, yes, I'm not at that point where I have that with writing. I don't know if even a bestseller author necessarily would say that they truly enjoy writing every day.
No, I don't think so. But I think they are able to put themselves in a situation to go out of the other options.
Yes. And that sometimes I'm thinking, because currently I still have plan B, right? I'm going 2 ways. I work 80%, and in my spare time, I try to write. And obviously that's then plan B, having the 80% income as a backup, right? And I do think I'm not against the all-in option, generally speaking. At this point, it doesn't seem the right point in time, but I do agree. Maybe something else will come where I say, I don't care now anymore. I'm going all in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And writing right this second doesn't feel that way. But I do believe, I just want to do it at my pace. And that may always just be a side hustle, right? Just something where I say I do it when I enjoy it. And again, I do write 1 page a day, kind of like as a diary. And I call it a 5-minute free flow exercise where the point is I just pick 1 word of the day that comes to mind first. And then I'll write a page. Today, let's say, would be interview, right? The word is interview, then I write a page. Yeah. And it's not, there's no reflection on what I'm going to write. There's no editing or anything. The whole point of it is just whatever comes to mind, write it down. And when the 1 page is full, it's full.
Yeah.
So I do that every day. I started with that January 1st, 2021. So I'm in my second year. And so far I haven't failed. No, I wouldn't say that. I failed a few days because of vacation or what have you not. But
that's pretty strict.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Nice.
That's sort of yeah. So I'm not going to say how it's called, but I do actually have that page posted on Instagram, although I'm not on Instagram. I have never in my life even flipped through Instagram. I would not know how to use Instagram per se, but for my own accountability, I take a photo of the page I write and I post it on Instagram so that it's publicly, so to say,
saved,
stamped that I did it on time.
So you have an account?
I have an account, but I have zero followers and I'm not following anyone. No hashtags, nothing. It's just for my own accountability to know I did it that day and I have proof that I did it. And it's weird.
Oh, that's a good, it's kind of a nice way to,
It's funny, like I started it and then I think about 3-4 months in, I figured, well, get over your fear of being public, and even if it just helps one person, maybe it will help one person. So you should make it public.
That's why I'm doing it.
Why being so private and get over it. And who cares about privacy? Everybody's, all of that. So I had this inner voice and then I figured, okay, I'm going to actually use hashtags. I still didn't follow anyone, but I started to use a hashtag or whatever. But something funny happened. I had a mind shift where I felt like I write different when I don't just write for myself. If in my mind I write for an audience, I didn't feel like I'm truly my authentic self, which is not what I wanted to experience, because I didn't want to write for someone and then change tonality or even content or the way I write. So it kind of did not work for me, but maybe I just didn't try it long enough. So I stopped it. And when I stopped it, I felt I was in my element more again, as I didn't feel sort of that pressure to write for someone. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Maybe one day I'll change. I mean, I guess,
What's like the sun it's a beautiful sundowner here. What is your advice for people in the world? Because we talked about that before. I don't know. No, we didn't in the episode, but before that, often, especially women, if I ask them, if you want to be my guest on the podcast, we talk about your life in general, blah, blah, etc. They often say, men as well, to be honest, but women more often say, well, what shall I tell? I'm not my life is not interesting. So thank you for sharing, because your life is super interesting. And what is your kind of last sentence advice to people who listen to this episode?
Yeah, I would say
to give them something without writing a book.
Yes. Then I would say I quote Dr. Seuss. And the quote is, why try to fit in if you're born to stand out? And that ties into the idea that we can never be as good if we're trying to copy someone else. Let's say you're a podcaster, right? If you think, who's your favorite podcaster host? Do you have one? Where you say, this is my idol, I want to be as good as this person is.
There is no one, but I like the motivation comes from Matthew Mockridge, which is a German, it's a funny thing, German-Canadian guy. I listened to a few podcasts of him, and he gives me the final motivation to do a podcast by myself.
Okay, but motivation more than anything, because where I'm going with this is...
It's not like I want to copy him. I want to be like him.
Exactly. If you would want to copy him, you would never be as good as... Like a copy, per definition, is never good as the original, right? So I guess my advice would be never try to copy others, because you will never be as good of a copy then if you just try to be your original, authentic, genuine you, you will always be the best at being you. No one can ever be better at being you than because you can be at being you. You're always the best version of yourself if you're yourself.
That's great.
100%, right? Yeah. So, and even growing up, I always felt like I'm a little different in many ways. I always had short hair growing up, never wore a skirt. I was sort of that tomboy, right? Not the girly girl or what have you. I played the trumpet, all these things where I didn't necessarily fit into that mold of being a girl, but I didn't care.
Yeah.
And yes, well, I had a phase between the ages of 15 and 20 where I had my hair long because, it's kind of that self-conscious phase where you figure like, how do I look best to attract guys and what have you not? Well, no one will be interested if you have short hair, so you have to have long hair. Otherwise, how will guys find you attractive? And, all these...
You try to copy someone.
Yeah, you're trying to fit in with the other girls to make yourself attractive until you're confident enough and get to the point where you figure like, no, my true nature is the short hair version of me. Yeah. That is me. And if that's not appealing to some or most, then that's fine. But that's how I feel best.
You're the most important person.
Yeah, that's how I feel like at my best. So
be yourself.
Be yourself.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. It was very nice to have you. We could go on for hours, but maybe we will meet another time, another day, another location in life, and maybe we do a second episode. Who knows?
Or I'll be in public and I'll do one with you.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Why not?
Then when I'm all over social. No, I'm kidding. But I would be interested to wrap this up if you're willing to share. Do you have like an answer to your last question? What would be your answer?
There's not only one answer, I would say, but an advice or something which I would say at the end of something or two. Yeah. It's kind of similar, but what I noticed is that yourself are the most important person. And we are growing up, a lot of us growing up, like we have to be like this, we have to be like this, we have to do this to be someone. And I tried a lot of different ways to be someone, to get my confidence, to get my applause, whatever, to be accepted in different groups. And I always were kind of, but at the end, and I not even have half time, I would say, probably in my life. But so far I can say that take care of yourself first. Whatever is your dream or your passion, go for it. And don't let nobody stop you because he says something which you don't feel like you are it. Like just be yourself, trust yourself, make mistakes, fall on the ground, stand up again, and figure out what's your passion is, and don't hide yourself because someone told you. Like, if that makes sense as an answer, I don't know. It's pretty wild and wide, but
all I say is amen. That sums it up. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. All right.
All right, let's watch the sunset.
Let's watch the sunset and have another drink.
Cheers to that.